You're listening to Season 2 of the Womenpreneur Asia podcast, and I'm your host, Krista Goon. Through Womenpreneur Asia, I hope to bring you stories of inspiring yet down-to-earth women in business across Malaysia and Asia. This episode is sponsored by Reebok Studio. In this episode, I spoke to Amita Nandy, who is the CEO and founder of Tact World in Selangor, Malaysia. She started out offering corporate workshops and training in 1991, and she still does. But now she also offers programs in conscious leadership and personal transformation. In this deeply personal episode, which is such a wonderful way to close the season, we touch on conscious leadership, what it is and why it matters more now than before. The purpose of doing good and being intentional are messages we need to embrace as entrepreneurs. We touch on the desire to create and produce, as well as the need to pause, reflect, and reconnect. Some of the themes mirrored Amita's own life, her own personal transformation journey as an entrepreneur for more than 30 years, which has a twist at the end, so stay till the end to find out more. You also hear us speak about the divine feminine, in which we as women need to tap into to draw power and courage from. I loved how apt the message is as this season closes, so I do hope that you'll enjoy this episode and you can hear all the wonderful things that we spoke about, but at the same time, enjoy the key learnings that come out of it. Welcome, Amita, to the Womenpreneur Asia podcast.
Thank you, Krista. So good to be here. Thank you.
So, Amita, let us begin with one question that I usually ask, but probably in different forms, is why do you start your business? And I know you started your business back in 1991, so that's quite some time ago.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Actually, in 1991, I was in Penang. And although my hometown is Kuala Lumpur, I got married and I landed in Penang. And it happened out of necessity because I had no one to really look after the children, honestly, you know. By then, I had the second child and they're 2 years apart. So I was struggling when I had the first child and going to work, and you know I was in AMD and Robert Bosch. It was not so easy, really. So by the time the second child came along, I felt that maybe it's time to start doing things differently. So it basically was triggered out of necessity, honestly.
But did you have any personal inclinations of what kind of business you wanted to start?
I grew up in a family that was always in business. My father was a writer and a publisher. And I guess I grew in an environment where everybody was, in some way involved in some kind of business or the other. So I never felt the pressure that normally people feel when they're giving up like a full-time job and then starting on their own. I really didn't feel like, how are things going to be? I took a plunge and I had seen it done. So I knew that if I wanted to do anything, it would be related to something on personal development, on training, perhaps on leadership. Yeah, it was almost like a decision, already made for me. Yeah.
So you said that there was not much like kind of pressure or even stress when starting your business. What about your husband or your spouse at that time? Like, what was his feelings about? Did he also come from an entrepreneurial family?
Not as much as mine, perhaps, but he was really very supportive. And at the beginning, actually, even, in coming up with the name and things like that, he had a huge part to play in, what the name would resonate and what it would mean to clients and stuff like that. So, he was very, very supportive and encouraging. Not somebody who would say, for example, be careful. Are you sure, you have a good, steady income? And no, nothing like that. So I was blessed. Yeah.
Was he also in business at that time?
Not really, but he was in a project management based organization. So he was working with other partners. Yeah. not his
So
own business.
I think that also helps, right, to have a supportive partner.
Perhaps. It definitely does. It definitely does. Yeah.
So, okay, now that you've talked about your husband, let's talk a little bit about your family as a whole. I know you have 3 sons. Of course, they're all grown up. And I also know that you're a grandmother.
I am, yes.
You look a bit too young to be a grandmother, but...
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Tell us about your family now and then.
All right. So my family actually started in Penang. The 3 of them grew up in Penang, the 3 boys. As they grew, I guess those days, maybe not so much tertiary education opportunities. So the first one flew the nest and he landed in KL and then later UK and whatever. But that was the start. I think that was a real big milestone because I don't think we ever imagined that. The first transition for me was leaving KL, going to Penang, but I embraced Penang as this was going to be my home. But as the children grew and their needs were, they were soon actualizing their needs. I guess they decided on that path of, moving to KL and then moving to England. The second one went to Australia. So, so today I am in KL because I found myself being alone in Penang. Everybody had left, So I came back and it was a nice welcome opportunity because my mother was also, getting on with life and stuff. I had lost my father in the process. I regretted not visiting him, often enough. So it was good for me to come back home. Now we are all here. Everyone's finished their education and stuff, and they're back here. And my children are they're all entrepreneurs in their own right, and they are in various businesses. They are in Ghost Kitchen, they are in biodiesel. My husband is in waste to wealth creation kind of business where he helps pig farmers, he helps developers in order to be more green, in order to leave smaller carbon footprints. Yeah, so they're all most of them are in the business of renewable energy and sustainability.
So it seems to me that your entire family are entrepreneurs.
They are, yeah. You could say that they are all in entrepreneurs. The younger son actually works with the elder son. Yeah, but I think down the road he might have his own passions as well. Yeah.
So you grew a family of entrepreneurs in a way. Plus, of course, yourself.
You could say that. You could say that. If there's one thing I tell my children is every failure, I know it's cliche, but honestly, every failure is about learning how to pivot, learning how to come out of that and just do things differently, And today, I think it fares very, very well, especially in an industry like especially in the times that we are in right now, I think it's superb advice that we can give our children. Okay. I'll just mute this. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So one of the things that we were just talking about before we talked about your family was your business, right? That you started in 1991. Mm-hmm. So it's called Tact.
It's called TACT. Yes.
Does it stand for something?
Well, when we first started, it was supposed to mean training and continuous tracking, to keep in touch with, because very often, even today, we go for training sessions or we go for a certain event and then it's forgotten, right? So we felt that emphasis on wanting to come back to revisit, to follow up, to track the development of the individual. So it meant it stood for that. But also, I'm in a business where how tactful you are, how empathetic you are, right? How, what is the word? How understanding you are of your client, of your stakeholder, right? So the whole idea of doing things with tact, doing things tactfully. So the word itself, I think, spells out exactly what we do,
Yeah.
in the nature of the solution.
I wanted to ask that because I thought it was an acronym for something.
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And at the same time, knowing you, I also believe that it stood for, I mean, the word itself is the word. Of course, it could be an acronym too. So I'm glad you cleared that for us.
thank you.
And what do you do at Tech World as a CEO and founder?
Okay. Very honestly, I my passion is really design of solutions, journeys, program content. That's really my passion. The operations part and all of that, honestly, if I had a choice, I really would not want to do it. But being always, when I started, for example, particularly, I had to be very much a one-man show, right? Meeting clients, ensuring you do the marketing, the sales, and all of that. But my cup of tea is really sitting out there and formulating solutions for women, for leaders. Today I'm looking at things like conscious leadership, humanity-centered leadership. And I think the pandemic is a beautiful backdrop for that to happen. If I had spoken or said this maybe 2 years earlier, it would have been a bit remote, perhaps, in the minds of people. But today, humanity-centered leadership, conscious leadership, I think is very easily embraced by employees, by leaders. So, as a CEO, as a founder, I guess my constant, what keeps me awake at night is honestly formulating solutions that will be relevant to people in whichever industry, or even people like individuals, and particularly passionate about women. And I run a lot of women workshops, certification programs that will really give them the solutions and the tools. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope I answered your
So
question.
I like to talk a little bit about conscious leadership, which I think a lot of people probably would have heard it, but may not know what it means. Yeah. So could you let us know, what does conscious leadership refer to versus just regular leadership, I guess?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think this is this is a word that is probably too broad, too big. And very often we can't put our finger on what exactly is consciousness. I must also I also want to acknowledge that recently during the pandemic, I was fortunate. This was a program that I have always wanted to do, but because it was a face-to-face program that was run in Johannesburg, in South Africa, I could not afford to do it. But because it went online during the pandemic, I enrolled myself for a program called Consciousness Coaching, which is ICF accredited. So the founder is Mark Steinberg, and he uses consciousness as the core pillar or the foundation of all coaching that we do, right? Whether it is for life, whether it's for business, whether it's for parenting, the foundation is consciousness. Why I bring him up is whenever we use the word consciousness, I think people have a connotation that it is religious or spiritual or metaphysical, right? But Mark Steinberg makes it so simple and so ordinary. I mean, all of us experience it. It's like the air you breathe, So consciousness for him is, he says, those who don't have power use force. Okay, if you don't have power, you use force. So it's about realizing that deep down in us, we all have that power, that untapped, that raw power within us, whether it is anger. And anger, we have always looked at anger as something negative, but actually it is pure energy. If we just know how to channel it and use it for our beneficial purposes, or putting it into positive use. So consciousness essentially is that voice within us that tells us to do the right thing. Honestly, it's as simple as that. So when you're a leader, right? When you're a mother, when you are a couple, for example, living consciously is about really getting in touch with that calling of wanting to do what is right, not just for us to what shall I say, to only have self benefit. No, not only for that, but it is good for you, good for others, good for the community, good for the planet. Yeah. So I don't know if I answered that question effectively. So conscious leadership is about that. So it's about how you trade, today we have things like governance, we have things like compliance, and these are little processes that are in place to ensure that organizations are doing the right thing. But does the organization have a heart, have a soul? Like during these times, maybe the way we treat our employees, our pricing, do we bring our prices down, for example? Do we give longer credit terms, for example, just to be cognizant and just to realize and feel for people that we deal with? So it is a whole host of doing good, doing the right thing, not just not to just pursue your own interests, but for everyone else, for the communities that we are in.
It seems to me that all your life you've been doing conscious leadership, right?
I think one thing that my family and I, if there is a mantra, it is about to ourselves be true, So whether it is a job, whether it is a deal that we walk away from, whether it is the way we deal with people, or the decisions we make, I think the first thing we check with is with ourselves. Does this feel right? Are you going to be able to sleep after you make this decision? Would you be able to, look at it 10 years later, 5 years later, and still feel proud that I made the right decision? Yeah. So I think that integrity, that authenticity, all that is so key from day one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems to me that it has always been in you, but this is just formalized learning for you.
I suppose, yeah. And Krista, you're right. You're right. When I was growing up, doing my growing up, in the FIZ, the Free Industrial Zone, where all the Intels and all are, and they were always on the lookout for, different programs and stuff like that. I felt that I got into like a routine of just doing the buzzwords, like today, design thinking, agile. I felt like I was always on a bandwagon. And there was almost a fear as to if I came out with my own brand. For example, if I spoke about humanity-centered leadership or conscious leadership 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there would be no takers. Really, there would be no takers. But today, I think that courage, that boldness, and today, being in this field of quantum science and all of that, I feel that this is really what people require, but maybe they just don't realize how to maybe articulate it. But I am really very glad that today people are talking about having purpose at work, having meaning in what you do, right? Employees are always today looking for that, because I think gone are the days of getting, promotions and getting a bigger paycheck. I think we're beyond that. We have come to a level of maturity where it's what's next today, right? Are you giving back, for example? That all that is becoming more meaningful and more necessary. Yeah, so I feel I am very blessed to be to be born at this time, to be growing at this time. Yeah.
And you're still growing.
And I'm still, yes, I don't think that will ever stop. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's also been hastened by the fact that we are living in pandemic times, where a lot of the conversation is about living, like really living in the present moment. Because as we can see from the news and from whatever that's happening around us, a lot of things are uncertain and possibly could be a little bit frightening, because there's really, we don't see an end to many things that we took for granted. I mean, we took a lot for granted, right? And we didn't see how it could go back to normal, as in like before all this happened. So I guess that's where also a lot of conversations are coming up about how to live a more, like you say, a more conscious life, not only conscious leadership at work, but also being a more conscious person. in our community and society. So this also brings me to one thing I wanted to ask you. I know now, even though you've left university for many years, you're doing a PhD, and you're doing a PhD in the very topic that we're talking about, right? What made you decide to go back to school again after so many, many years? And of course, you've been starting a business, running a business, and caregiving and doing what you're doing as a wife and a mother and now grandmother. Yeah. So what made you go back into doing your studies?
I always felt, I guess it is also the line of work that I do, developing, talent development and people development. I know this is again another cliche. It's very true that I feel that when I don't learn, I am in some way dying or stopping to grow, but at the same time, it is not just picking up anything, right? I felt that in the area of physical health, well-being, mental health, emotional health, I felt that that the new frontier in the world of medicine, for example, is no longer going to be visiting a doctor and getting pills and waiting to die or waiting to be on an operation theater one day. There's got to be another way of doing this. And also the focus on preventative rather than reacting to disease or reacting to bad health, So I felt that learning or getting into a field that would give me the tools, the knowledge, and the new research that's coming up in medical technology and things like that would be something that would be relevant for me, my family, as well as to one day to, it's my dream and aspiration that I will have community clinics, where I could share some tools early in people's lives so that, as they don't have to wait at the last minute. And then, we call it emergency medicine. Then you need to go to the hospitals and stuff. So that is what really inspired me. But obviously, I don't come with a medical background. And my aim was always about health in the workplace, right? So the tools that I learned in under integrated medicine are not just anatomical. It's not just physical based. It is about energy medicine, all right? Today, it is becoming very, we speak about things like you are what you think, you are what you eat, So breakthrough concepts in physics that has the wave theory, for example, or non-locality. At one time we used to say when somebody is ill, far away, think about him, right? Keep him in your thoughts, keep him in your prayers, and he heals. And it used to sound like mumbo jumbo, right, at one time. But today we know that from the theory of non-locality, you can be in a different place and still heal others who are far away, yeah? Just by willing it, just by pushing energy to that individual. So our thoughts are really the architects of our health and, the well-being of people around us. So, it is a tough program because like I said, I don't have the medical background. So those medical subjects become tough for me. But there are also others like, for example, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, aromatherapy, things like biofeedback. These are fantastic subjects where, it basically explores the various sheets that we have, like the 5 energy bodies that we have, right? So going beyond the physical, for example. So it's very exciting. There's also a whole new subject on medical technology. So wearables like watches and headbands and things like that you wear, where you have data that is collected. So you empower patients, you don't have to wait for the expert opinion of doctors, you can actually do that yourself. So yeah, I'm excited that health is no longer the business of doctors alone. Health becomes our preoccupation, and we can actually do something to improve our own health, I mean, I've got a 92-year-old mother that I have a caregiver for her as well. She is so, I call her a drug addict, really. She is so into her medication. She takes
Okay.
about 30 tablets a day, and she gives so much power to the doctor. Without the doctor, she would not survive, But that's the way they have, that's the world and the culture that they've come from, and it doesn't have to be like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So I hope that was a short story to, a short explanation to a long story as to why I've gone back to school. Yeah.
Okay. But I do resonate with what you say, because I think we all have the power in our hands to take care of our own health.
Mm-hmm.
And even before anything happens, we should be able to take care of ourselves first, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now I also want to talk a little bit about your very famous father, though.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
So I think if many listeners of this podcast are Malaysians and they are Gen X, they probably would know who your father is, because his books were used in schools and probably as reference books for English back in the days, right? And it's very, very popular. So could you tell us a little bit about your father?
Yeah. So my father was is Milan Nandy. He's another self-made entrepreneur. I mean, today we call him entrepreneur, self-made man. He was actually a migrant at his time, migrant from what Bangladesh is today. It was India before. And when he came here, of course, it was a struggle. And so his passion for the English language, right, is what got him to start writing at a very, very early age. He was a school teacher, and then he started writing on the English language. Even today, till today, I don't think the aspects of the language that he had written, I don't know whether there is anyone out there who has done it the way he has done it. So whether it is synonyms, whether it is sentences, sentence structure, whether it's grammar, I always remember him by this. When we used to have friends who come over, he used to stop us and correct us about the way we pronounced our words, or he would ask us, okay, you use that word, can you spell it, And we used to always feel very, very embarrassed that he would do that in front of our friends. Today, I miss that, honestly. He was like a walking dictionary, all the time. So Milan Nandy was that. Today, I don't know in Malaysia whether they still use, I mean, I see his books in bookstores and stuff, because he has sold royalties to other companies, But in Singapore, it's quite prominent, the use of his work. So yeah, like you said, teachers, teaching colleges, teaching universities, popularly would have used his work. Yeah. And I guess that's where, we were almost beaten to making sure that our English was sterling or spotless or whatever. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about that, because I also want to talk about your book that you authored, which is quite relevant to your dad.
Yes.
I must say, right? So you authored a book about mastering English.
Yes, I did. Yeah, so that was after I completed my master's. When I came back after my master's education in New Delhi, and I was waiting, because at that time in India I was going to go back to do my PhD then, but Mrs Gandhi was assassinated, and things were in chaos and turmoil over there. So I had to wait, And so before I started work, I helped my dad actually in editing, in meeting his clients. And he was not really a businessman. He was another artist, another designer, who didn't really do business very well. But his first passion was creating work on the English language. So in the course of that, he had an order from Singapore. Keen's publication, and he needed to create some content for that particular publisher. And he says, would you like to try it? I said, wow, yeah, because all my life I grew up learning English from my father, from his books. So I had a good grounding in grammar and stuff like that. And so, yeah, that was actually what got me started in authoring that book. So it was meant for high school, levels in following the Singapore curriculum. Yeah.
So I found that out about, when I was researching about you before we got onto this recording. So I was like, wow, that's interesting. Never knew that you didn't speak about it before. So
yeah,
I
don't
just wanted
really.
to just remind you that, yay, there's a book that you wrote, but it's about English, which is actually a tribute to your dad, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have picked it up if not because of him. No. Yeah.
Okay. So now I want to talk about marketing, because we know that marketing these days is very different from marketing back in the day when you started. So back in the day when you started, there was no social media, there was really no internet, and the world was completely different. So how did you, promote or even market your business in the early days? Even though, of course, you mentioned that you did know people, right, in the free trade zone, in the factories and the multinationals, but what was the marketing like for you back then?
Yeah. And that is a great question, Krista, because I was doing everything myself, right? Creating the content, taking care of the kids and everything else. I would say, and I think it still holds true today, one thing that really got me going, and it was quite a good business in terms of, there was always business continuity, as we say today, right? So I didn't have to worry that next week there'll be no sales or next month there won't be sales. I mean, there were ups and downs, of course. There are seasonal times and stuff like that. But you get used to it, you get into a trend. But I must say, fundamentally, my marketing, which I am so grateful for, is word of mouth. Word of mouth. And for that, one needs to put in his best. All right. I put my heart and soul in everything that I do. And unless it is something I really enjoy and love doing, I will not take it on. Right. So you give me a program and you say, okay, can you design something on this? If it is not something I have a passion for, or I have like experience in, I really rather not take it up, So through that, I feel that I've had very good referrals. I've had very good recommendations. And the Penang Skill Development Center, the PSDC, and particularly Bunla and the team, I still have a wonderful relationship with them, even after 20, 25 years now. I struck a sort of a partnership, with them, and they did most of my marketing for me eventually, right? But when I started off, before I actually landed up through PSDC, was actually be very dependent on one person referring me to somebody else, or somebody else would call and say, I heard about this course that you ran for, A organization. Would you be able to run something for us? So honestly, that was mainly my source of marketing. Yeah.
Has it changed? I mean, over the years, or has it still remained the same?
Actually, very much the same. Very much the same. I haven't really done very much aggressive, marketing via websites or Facebook or whatever. It is still very, very much the same. And I think I'm happy the way it is, because it's almost like a boutique enterprise, yeah, because you're coming up with solutions that people are going to take back and use for their lives, for their work, for their lives, for business. I don't want them to just come and say, oh yeah, that was wonderful. It was a great show and that's it. Yeah. They must be able to replicate, apply it. So it's painstaking. Yeah. Before I design something, I always go back to if possible, the CEO, speak to him and find out what exactly is the pain point, what exactly is his need. And if he doesn't fix it right now, what could be the repercussions or the consequences? So it's painstakingly constructed, actually, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
What were some of your most notable programs or workshops?
Well, one I will never forget is the Penang state was playing host to the national government, Malaysian national government. They've got a program it's called Bhakti, I think, the wives of the ministers, right? They belong to a group called the Bhakti Club or the Bhakti Enterprise or something. Yeah. And every year, I don't know whether they still do it, but every year a different state will play host. So in I don't know whether it was 98 or 97, Penang was the host. And so the Penang Skills Development Center was appointed to host the ministers' wives. There were about 200 of them or something. Yeah. And they needed a program on team building and on adventure and experiential activities to be designed for that 3 or 4 days that they were going to be in Penang. Of course, there were other cultural events and things like that. So I was put in charge of managing that project. So I was like the project manager. And I needed to create little activities, and I remember we used Teluk Bahang, the forest reserve in Teluk Bahang. And also we had to localize it. So we had invited the kampong folk to do food and stuff like that. So it is something that I really, really enjoyed because we had to worry about security. We had to worry about health and safety, we had to worry about even traffic, ferrying our dignitaries from one hotel to another location and stuff. So it was a huge, mammoth event. And we had 9 months to 10 months of planning, with the state government and the police and the Bomba and all the authorities. And at that time, it was Rosma, actually, who was the patron of the Bhakti group. And it was a whole new experience compared to corporate and business, business objectives to be met. But it was something, I would say it went beautifully. It went perfectly. I had a great team. We did wonderful debriefs, learning and debriefs from those activities. It was something I will treasure. Yeah. And I'm really very grateful that I was given that opportunity. Yeah.
Wow. Would you prefer to do corporate or would you like to do this unique programs again?
Yeah, I am. In fact, even now, I run a workshop certification with my sister, which is a certification program on awakening the divine feminine and something unique, something different. Yeah. So yeah, as the word suggests, divine feminine, it's not nothing religious or anything like that, but it is about going back to that inner you, right? Discovering your blocks, for example, discovering your default programs. So we have women who are married, who are embarking on jobs, new business owners, a variety of women who come from various walks of life. And the commonality is just astounding. The ability for women to unconditionally love. And as a result, whatever circumstances they are put in, there is an energy and strength that just emerges, right? If only we had faith in that it will always be there. You just need to learn how to just go and tap it. So to answer your question, I enjoy the corporate. I enjoy this as well. And I think it is that balance that gives me that whole purpose behind what I do. So I won't choose one against the other because I'm just as equally excited about the buzz of the economic world, what's happening with IoT and, with Industry 4.0. I'm just equally excited about that as well. Yeah.
Okay. So both, right? So your answer would be both. Corporate and some unique programs in the
I don't think you can separate the two. It is us as individuals that go into the corporate anyway, Yeah.
And I remember you saying this. I remember when I first did my Womenpreneur Asia launch, and there was that women sitting astride the tiger, and suddenly someone told me, "Oh, it's Durga." Was it you? Was it you? I think it was you who told me it was Durga, and I was like, I didn't even know about it. So I started to Google, and I found out, it is Durga. It's like this strong feminine power within all of us. Yes. So I thought, wow, Well, I'm glad I landed on something that was really, it was not so intentional in the beginning, but in the end, I realized that, okay, it works with what I have in mind for my
Mm,
podcast. So I
mm,
guess that helped me. So I was thinking, wow, this is so interesting. And it
yeah.
comes from you.
Yeah, you were guided, I suppose, in the
Yeah.
line of work that you're doing. Yeah.
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 So then does it mean that it was there were not many hurdles uh, in your path when you started your business?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
often think about that. I often think about that, Krista, and I ask myself, I mean, there's so many people who have their story is about I had a sickness and then I grew from that. I was raped and then I grew from that. And then I had a crash and then I grew from that. Um, I don't want to say that I do not have. I still do, even till today, if you want to look at it that way. I just look at these as really a pit stop. It's like a pause, right, where it helps you to breathe again, where it helps you to rethink, where it helps you to, maybe if I didn't have those in my life, I don't know, I may have ended up in a place that I would not eventually be happy. But because there were these little hurdles, which you may call as a crash or a whatever, I've always looked at them as yeah, maybe I need to go left, or maybe I need to change course, or maybe I need to start doing things differently. So I don't pronounce it as a hurdle, maybe. But don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that it has been absolutely smooth sailing throughout, whether it's financial, whether it's emotional or whatever. But I've taken it on my stride, I think. Yeah. And again, those were important stop buttons before I go straight again, or before I push along, those were very critical junctures. Yeah.
As we spoke before we ended up on this recording, is that you were we actually were looking at certain parts of the business and what you're doing right now, so that we could talk about it on the podcast. So all of those things that I remember you telling me was that the pandemic has also affected, right, the training business, and of course many other businesses, not just training businesses, but many other businesses. So how has your business been coping, and what have you been doing during this, perhaps I would say, well, more than a year already, right?
Yes, yes.
Of the pandemic, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's another real story and a real setback. I had to close shop, meaning to say I had to put the business on the back burner, honestly. I had huge projections and plans. I had the promise of engagements and projects. But come February, everybody canceled indefinitely, right? And I was not sure what I was going to do, honestly. So I did a little bit of work where I moved online completely, moved virtual completely. A lot of them were free. I did a lot of programs for the Human Resource Development Fund, where they were trying to engage people virtually, and I was part of that initiative to see whether we could gain some traction. And then I moved into doing bite-sized virtual work because people were also busy, having to do business differently. So they were not wanting to send people for 6 hours, 8 hours for training programs. So bite-sized 1 hour learning, 2 hour learning sessions. I did that to keep afloat, basically. Eventually, and also the other political situation and changes and stuff like that. So I had to be graceful and accept what was happening, and just say that, yeah, maybe for a while, just see what happens. But I also needed to survive, So I had an offer to go back into like a full-time job, which I took. And I'm in the process of actually coming out of that slowly, But so this is I think the trying moment. You call yourself an entrepreneur, you call yourself a business owner, but a time comes when you're no longer that, because your business is not yielding anything, right? So what do you do then? Are you humble enough to say, okay, let me step down and let me see what's available, right? And go back into something that will help you to ride the wave or ride the times. So I did that, Krista. Yeah. So it's not like an end to the business, right? It's still the mindset of do whatever is necessary. I think the most important is to grow as an individual, pick up new skills, be relevant, continue to be relevant, and be resilient in taking what comes. And hopefully 1 year, 2 years, it's no longer going back to the normal again. Yeah. But what is the next normal? And just prepare for that. Yeah.
I almost see it as a pause for you, not so much a stop.
Yeah.
It's more like a pause so that you can maybe reconnect with probably what you want to do, and probably in a new way. Probably still the same things that you have in mind, conscious leadership programs, transformation programs, but probably in a different form.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is. And part of that transformation is not just the content that we create for people, it's also you as the person who goes out there to share it, because it is about, I think it is about that authenticity, that validity of what you're saying and what you're doing, right? So if I'm going to tell somebody, like my children, one of them said that I don't want to go to college anymore, right? At a very young age, I want to start my own business, right? Of course, it shocked the daylights out of me. But in my head, I was thinking, why am I reacting this way? Because of peer pressure, because of what others would say. Oh my God, he hasn't even done his Form 5. He hasn't finished his university education, Then I realized, no, I mean, who am I to foretell what's going to happen, And he said to me, let me start my business and I'll come back later and study. And and I took that leap of faith. So today, when I tell a mother or another woman, don't worry about it. The child has his own wisdom, just trust that. I'm speaking because I have come from that experience, So I think that pause is also to acknowledge our own selves as well, is to give ourselves a pat on the back and say, hey, yeah, you didn't do too badly, Yeah, it's something we don't do. Yeah.
And you have a great story to tell. Look at how your son turned out.
Yes. And today he is in the Harvard business MBA program. And he's keeping his word. He started his business. He's doing well, and he also is going to complete his masters in the next year or so. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's not be too hard and fast about things. Live life. Keep that light in you, right? Keep that buzz in you. Life is about being happy every step of the way. Yeah.
So all this, can I say 30 over years in business? 30 years in business,
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself as a woman, as an entrepreneur? What have you really learned?
I think my biggest lesson is, are you comfortable in your own skin, right? Trusting your instinct. Yeah. Having solid relationships with clients, with friends, with family, authentic relationships, and having that trust that you can deliver, because you know that it would be something that you can back up, right? And you know that it will work. Yeah. So I think it is about that faith and that confidence that you can do something that makes a difference.
Great answer. I love that answer. I didn't expect it, but I love that answer. So we are going to switch up into a little bit more of personal stuff. So as if we haven't been so personal in this, we're going to more personal stuff. But this personal stuff is a fun personal stuff, okay? So I'm going to ask you, what are you no longer afraid of?
I am no longer afraid of another uncertainty that is going to knock my door. Yeah, it could be inflation. It could be, yeah.
Okay. What is important to you right now?
What is important to me right now is that I'm able to make a difference to the next generation. Right? Yeah.
As you have done through the mentoring program.
Thank you.
With the
I
Penang
hope
State
it,
Government.
yeah, with the Penang, yeah. Yeah.
Who inspires you?
My father was, I think, my biggest, the biggest person in my life that inspired me as I was growing up. He was always someone who, as Jesus said, they slap you on the right, you give them your left or whatever. Yeah, there is no such thing as failure ain't an option. Yeah, yeah. I think we lived by that. The other people would be people like Oprah, would be Deepak Chopra, would be Joe Dispenza, yeah, would be Bruce Lipton, and Paul Druin, the founder of Quantum University. These are people who have shown me that it takes one to change the world, honestly. You don't need a whole village. If you believe and you're convinced that this is the way to go and you push on with courage to do it, you can change the world. Yeah.
And who do you inspire?
Oh, wow. Definitely my mentees, I think, the Penang group. They still are in touch with me. And so that's really very heartwarming. The others, I guess, my siblings, I do, I think I make a difference in their lives. My mom, I think I do. And my family, for sure. Yeah, my children, my husband. Yeah, I can see that.
And what is something surprising about you that very few people know about?
I think many people don't know that I used to be quite an outdoorsy, adventurous kind of person in my younger days. Even while I had kids, actually. I was Malaysia's first woman to drive a pickup, an Isuzu Invader pickup. And I took I was a participant in the International Silverstone International Rally. That was about 2,000 kilometers of jungle roads, off track, as well as normal roads from Malaysia, from Kuala Lumpur to Chiang Rai in the Thai border. And I did that for 2 years. Yeah. So
Wow.
that was a whole adventure on endurance and all of that. Yeah. So yeah, maybe not many people know that.
And do you still do that? No.
No, we don't really do that very much in KL. I mean, my children, it has left a huge impact on them. Some of them are wanting to go back and wanting to do it. But now with these cross-border things, but we're slowly getting there. I think they're all getting ready. We're getting the equipment, the vehicles ready, but not as aggressively as we used to do it before. Yeah.
I also want to remind you that you told me before that you backpacked in India.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes.
With your kids when they were young.
Yes.
And I listened to that, I was thinking, wow, okay, you're really brave.
And in India too,
Yeah. When your kids were how young? I mean, they were young, right?
There were 3 of them. The eldest was 8, and the youngest was 3 or something, 2 or 3. And we backpacked from India to Nepal and back to India. Yeah, we did that in the millennial 99 into 2000. Yeah, the Y2K. Yeah, during the Y2K time. Yeah.
That's why I thought, like, oh wow, that one, I still remember that after so many years. I still remember that. Wow, such an adventurous family that you are.
Yes, yeah. And uncannily during the tsunami that happened, we were in Phuket, and it happened right before us. We were actually caught on that island. So that was another adventure that happened. And during the Himalaya tsunami, I was actually with my husband in Gangotri in the Himalayas, and we were actually cut. There was an avalanche, right? The Himalayan avalanche, and we were stuck in a Himalayan village for about 7 days, and had to wait for the authorities to, get the roads in order before we came back. So that was another huge adventure. We got to know the villagers. We we mingled with them and got to know the local culture. It was fun. Yeah.
See, I told you, those were the pauses in your life.
Yeah, needed that.
Maybe you couldn't have come back without getting to know the people that you stayed with.
That's
Okay.
true. Yeah.
Your favorite food?
My favorite food is, I'm a vegetarian, so any vegetable actually. I love vegetables. Yeah.
Any type
Whatever
of cuisine?
Very honestly, South Indian. I love South Indian. Yeah.
With all the coconut milk and
the curry leaf. Curry leaf excites. I love curry leaf. Yeah, I love the smell of curry. I would use it as a perfume if possible.
maybe someone out there can make
that.
curry leaf perfume. Which, by the way, I like. I love the smell of spices like cinnamon, cardamom, and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite book?
Wow. I like Arundhati Roy, the God of Small Things.
Oh.
Yeah.
I loved her book too.
I would love anytime. You can pick that up 3 times, 4 times, Oh, lovely.
Okay. Favorite movie?
So many. Don't know which one now. Well, yeah, this is going to give my age. A Star is Born, Barbara Streisand. Yeah. That was a love story. Yes.
But it's okay. They know you're a grandmother.
Yes. So I'm a Star is Born type of person. Yeah.
Favorite song?
Well, I really can't answer this question. Maybe Black or White, is it? By what's his name?
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. Yeah.
Okay. Favorite local restaurant? Could be Penang or could be KL.
I would say the Ganga. The Ganga in Bangsa.
Okay.
Yeah,
it serves Indian vegetarian.
It serves Gujarati, Northern Indian vegetarian. Yes, very nice. Yeah.
Okay.
Very authentic.
And finally, your favorite compliment?
To others, you mean?
Others have said about you.
Oh. Natural. That I am who I am. I am myself. Yeah.
Okay. I love doing this section with all my guests because it gives me an insight into what they like, what they read, And of course, the final question before we close the interview is, what's that one final thing that you would like our listeners to take away from hearing about your life, the things you've done, driving off-road, backpacking. So many things you've done. And of course, the many lessons you've learned in your life. What is that one key takeaway or maybe a key lesson or something that you want people, if there's only one thing that they could learn from listening to us today, what would it be?
To honor who they are, to honor themselves. You are not what the picture that others have of you, right? Your husband has an image of you, your child has an image of you, your parents have an image of you, but that's not what defines you. That's definitely not what defines you. Just you need to find that image of yourself and uphold that, live that. That becomes your neon light banner. Yeah, I think, and once you find that, treasure it and nurture it and love it. Yeah.
So thank you. That has been such a wonderful, final takeaway for our episode today. Because as before we got onto recording, I was letting you know that you'll be the 13th episode of my season 2.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you. 3. But I think that is a wonderful way to close the season. Because I start the season with a bang, I have to close it with a bang too, right?
Wow. Okay. I mean, I hope I did justice to the listeners and to your show. Yeah, thank you very much, Krista, for this opportunity. It was really a pleasure. I've attended a couple of interviews, but this has been really one of the most enjoyable ones.
Thank you. I hope I do justice to your story and present not only, that's what I always say, the stories are not just about the beautiful aspects of entrepreneurship. It also has to be real, and it also has to represent the women who are talking about their own stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's my intention. Yeah. And I thank you so much for being part of this journey with me. And in time to come, we can look back on it and see like, wow, we actually did something interesting together. And
Thank
even
you.
though I've known you for what, 20 years? I've known you for
more
20
than that,
years.
Krista. Yeah. We have really grown together.
Yes. I met Amita when we were in a yoga class together. And that's how we formed a friendship that was like back in the 2000, 2000 or early 2000, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, before we end, where's the place that people can find you if they want to connect with you or to reach out to you?
I think LinkedIn is best. You just type Amita Nandy, and yeah, I'm there. I'll be very, very happy to keep in touch and see if we can be on this path of making a dent, making a difference to everyone around us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amita. It was such a pleasure interviewing you. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Really, it has been a pleasure.
We'll see you again.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to the final episode of Season 2. Get more information about this episode from our website, womenpreneurasia.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and do rate us if you're on Spotify or any podcast app that you're using to listen to this podcast. When I first launched my podcast in December 2020, I was an absolute newbie. I didn't know how to create a podcast, and now, many months later, I've come to the 13th episode of Season 2. If you've been wanting to start your own business or any project, let me just tell you that now is the time. The reason I started Womenpreneur Asia was to challenge myself, to become a better interviewer, to learn from other women, and to share stories of women entrepreneurs around me. I knew some of these women, but I was also introduced to many other women, and I've made so many new friends through this podcast. I've had an insightful journey so far, and like you, I'm inspired each time I hit the record button. While I started this podcast for women, I also know that many men listen to my podcast too, and I love how gender neutral my podcast is. So if you've been afraid and yet dying to start something, even if right now you think it's too overwhelming, just take it one step at a time. And if you do so, please let me know by leaving a comment on the website. That's how I did this podcast. I did it one episode at a time, even when I didn't know how I could fit it into my schedule. Season 3 will be starting soon, so stay tuned. If you missed some of the episodes, I hope you'll go back and listen to them. And until then, I thank you for taking the time to listen to Womenpreneur Asia. I appreciate you and appreciate all that you're doing to help me share the stories of women entrepreneurs with the rest of the world. Love and light to you.